Okay, the period of 1988, the time of 1988 produced a couple of things. First, it had to do with um, with the seriousness that the tobacco companies had finally realized that everyone had to get together behind the joint defense. So obviously there was a reason for the project in Louisville, Kentucky, and the orbits of law firms, the orbiting law firms, particularly those structured through Shirkari Bacon, so that there could be a computerized system. And this was a computerized system. They were afraid of litigation. They kept litigation going, and yet they never produced any documents. And there again, I have to say, okay, if you're never going to produce any documents, what are you doing this for, and why am I there? Well, I'm there, and they're doing two things. One thing is they're informing me about what they've done, and they're giving me sources that I can go look up, and I did go look up. And so in 1988, 99, 89, 90, 91, it was a constant with me. I just, it was a virus, as I was to tell Fox de Moisey, I'm going to give you a virus here, and I did, practically, and he stopped smoking. And so if you look at 1988, there was a threat coming, not from Chipalone or Haynes or any of that, but there was in the 60s or 70s millions of dollars that was being spent in order to get, I think the sum total that had been awarded in the 80s was 750, but nobody ever got it. And down in the South, where Don Barrett had produced a amount of money, uh, not any money really, but he had produced a win. He had shaken the timbers of these people who were in the stock market. And so when you look at the master settlement agreement and you say, well, since 1998, 1997, since they reached this agreement. Well, what marvelous things have happened. The FDA has taken over. We've had a RICO case in the federal jurisdiction, and these guys are really bad. But think of it. Just how much have they won? They won everything because the master settlement agreement essentially gave it to them. And when you think about things that are going on right now, such as we're working on quitting tobacco. We're still out there. The least important thing to tobacco was in 1988. Uh, their billboards, and even an idiot could notice that billboards weren't significant. And yet, at the end of the tail, when they give away things, they start giving away the CTR. And they give away the CTR, which was the most important thing, where they could have criminalized the tobacco industry. The Tobacco Institute was a lobbying group, registered, so that wouldn't have made any difference. So in 1988 and 89, 89 brings in the fellow who was to be the exponent of what was theatrical in terms of presenting the case against tobacco. And he had all the bona fides to do so because he was locked in the same rooms that I was. Only, and I'm going to guess that he was under worse strictures than I was in terms of what you could and couldn't say. I mean, we were in the law department, and the law department, you just didn't say certain things. I remember talking to this guy, and on in a meeting. years after. And I said, "Did you ever get into the library?" And he told me that he could never go to the library. And this is the man who was actually to become the icon, or the not the iconoclastic person, but the icon for the deliverance of the message to everyone who was again tobacco. Again, what happened in 1988 was virtually useless, to the point of producing anything except it was my first year. It was the first year that we began to do this project, and by the end of the by the end of the period where I had worked for for Wyatt Terrancombs, I had come to terms with a lot of things that I strongly felt strongly about, particularly in the sense of writing it down. I did this, and every night, and I produced over I don't know, thousands of pages of notes, and every night I had written something, and every morning when I went in, I um, I had produced something, not every day, but certainly during times when I could. It became an obsession. But the reality of everything that has to do with the employment periods, and when you look at Dr. Wigan's appearance in 1990, a year after, I remember reading the introduction, because they published a little booklet about new employees, and he appeared, and that was in 1989. I don't think he was around in '88, because they were writing about him in '89, and we had access to the bulletins, the newspaper, the in-house newspaper, and they introduced him in 1989. And interestingly enough, our paths do cross, and certainly, if you fast forward to 1992, a lot of stuff happens between 1990 and 1992, but the basic thing is, in March of 1992, I have had a 6 weeks notice, approximately, and I will be departing, and I leave on March the 13th from Brown and Williamson. I leave having already met with some people years before. In 1991, I met with a guy by the name of oddly enough, Covert, and he was a bit of a foolhardy guy with a suit against tobacco, a lawsuit, and he was not very helpful. But he came through Richard Denard, who was also not very helpful at that time. Although at one point he came down and told me that I could never actually write a book, couldn't publish a book about tobacco, because they would destroy you, and of course you couldn't make any money, which is not something I really thought it would be a big seller. I wasn't familiar that much with anything that had gone before, certainly not Daniel Ellsberg. Never paid any attention to that as I was doing this. I didn't know what a whistleblower was, actually, and to this date, I'm not called a whistleblower by most people. But what is apparent to me is these people wind your head after a while. And when things came down a little bit later on, after I left in 1992, in March 13, 1992, I wondered, what did they know? What did they worry about in terms of me? Well, apparently nothing. They weren't concerned about me. They really I was concerned about them because I had there was Covair, there was I had I buried documents in various places. I had spoken with Martin Mentz. Martin Mentz had agreed to help me write a book, and then he backed out. I had people in Washington, and there were briefs being written in Washington. One of them by an advocacy group. I won't name it, but they had a great deal of pride in the work they did. The litigation group, which later came up with Alan Morrison as one half, and I think this was started, I believe it was by, and with all due respect, I do say, I don't think he knew at the time. I don't think that Ralph Nader knew at the time, and nor do I know whether he would actually have come forth and given any help to Fox DeMoisy later on, when Fox was alone in the woods. And yet, I know for a fact later on that a lot of people wouldn't join in any effort. And we're you know, when you look at 1992 and 1993, you have a period where things began to change, and not until I'm able to get to somebody, and that's Fox DeMoisy in 1992. I actually, toward the end of 1992, I made contact with Fox DeMoisy, probably the most noble and the best attorney you could ever find, because he agreed that this would be something that he wanted to do after great thought. And there was a lot of, this is tobacco country, and he had taken this on. But the people who had not taken it on, let's just give the list. Alan Morrison, he eventually comes in. One of the shocking no's came from the Ash fellow, Richard. I forgot his name, but anyway, the man just absolutely hung the phone up on me. There were a number of people, and of course, Alan Morrison couldn't find a pro bono in Washington, much less someone who would, if you had the money, would be able to come out against tobacco. But in 1992, things looked back on 1998 and wondered, what in the world would it be like if you have had produced no evidence whatsoever, nothing? And truly, in 1988, there was no evidence. Even though there were cases going on, there was Chippewa Haynes, there was the cases that Barrett was trying. There were some Texas guys who were in the 80s. They weren't getting anywhere. And of course, going way back into the first wave, the second wave, nothing appeared because there was no documentation. And to be honest, to be truthful, the reality was they were committing enormous frauds, and it doesn't. Fraud was intentional. It was certainly intentional when the lawyers were doing it, and you just have to find a good lawyer now to say, okay, who was wrong here? And I've heard enough and read enough of the stuff that came from the press during this period after Fox got hold of this. But 88, it was a big time for nothing. You didn't have anything, so nobody got anywhere. And 89, the same, but you had the future spokesperson for everyone in this scenario, which was produced by Dick Scruggs, and that comes about in 1994. Unfortunately, I'll end here with the note that I can go back to 88 or 89, because there's a lot of crossover between the events of 1989 and what happens with the material as it comes about in the future. Thank you.